can we please call the roll?
Madam Vice Mayor, you want to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Let's do that first. Terry Brooks, do you mind leading us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Now may we call the roll?
We shall. Councilmember Breckus,
I'm here.
Councilmember Dorr. I know she is driving and on the phone. I'm not sure if she can.
She looks
unmute.
like she might be on mute, and I don't know if we're having technical difficulties, but it does appear as though she's on.
Councilmember Delgado. Here. Councilmember Weber is absent at this time. Councilmember Jordan.
Here.
Councilmember Reese.
Here.
Mayor Sheevy.
I too believe she's on, but I think
Present.
we're having the issue we tend to have with the mute.
Madam Vice Mayor, you do have a quorum of the Reno City Council.
Thank you very much. At this time, Madam Clerk, we will move into public comment.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. We're moving into item A3, which is general public comment. Our first public commenter today is Dwight Nelson, followed by John Locke, followed by Mark Markell.
Corey, do you mind helping him? Thank you. Good morning.
I just wanted to let the group know I can speak now. Thank you.
Okay, is that good?
He's going to bend it down for you.
Okay.
See if that works for you, John.
Did you hear me, Mickey?
We can hear you,
Can you hear
Councilmember
me?
Dorr. Thank
I'm
you so
sorry.
much.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, and Mayor may want to try *6 on top of everything else.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have noted she, Mayor Sheevy, I believe, just came off of mute.
Madam Clerk, can you hear me?
We can, Madam Mayor, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
It's lovely to hear you.
Dwight, go right ahead.
Nice to talk to everybody this morning. My name is Dwight Nelson, and I am a passenger for the bus system here in Reno. I just want to see if they can get this resolved very soon. It's really a drag. I can't get anywhere in town without using the bus. I hope you guys can just get this resolved soon. And that's all I have to say this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
John Locke, followed by Mark Markell, followed by Amanda Nelson.
Good morning. My name is John Locke. I'm a driver for the RTC ride. I've got some numbers that I'd like to share with all of you. Keolis has offered a 4% pay increase, or what they call a pay increase. Nationally, it is 6.1 cost of living. Now let's add in Reno at 1.8%. That is an 8% cost of living for people of Reno. And Keolis wants to give a 4%? That's a pay cut. That is literally a slap in the face to the drivers and to the community. Now, it seems awfully weird that the RTC board is supposed to be neutral. But Bill Thomas put out a letter to the news media full of lies about the union. The union has gone to the table in good faith. The union has done everything it can to get Keolis to come to the table, and Keolis refuses. It's got to stop. And it seems odd that as soon as Mr. Thomas' letter came out, the RTC board automatically cancels their meeting for the month. I'd like to know why. What are they hiding? I want to know who's on the take or who's just corrupt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk.
Mark Markel, followed by Amanda Nelson, followed by Alejandra Gomez.
Hello, Madam Mayor and City Council members and City Manager. My name is Mark Markel, and I'm a Concerina resident. And I'm sure y'all know my story, so I won't get into that. But I don't want people, I want to be an example of what happens, what can happen when you get in a car with a drunk driver. I can't walk very well anymore. I obviously can't talk very well anymore. And I can't take care of myself. I can, but I really can't. I live in a disabled house, a handicapped house. At Rogers Plaza is managed by ESI. They're good people. And I just want to be an example of what can happen when you get in a car with a drunk driver. And so please, people, don't drink and drive or get in the car with one. Whatever you do, just don't do that. And I'm sorry if you don't understand what I'm saying. But just remember me before you do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Amanda Nelson, followed by Alejandra Gomez, followed by Terry Brooks.
Oh, I want to say, give the teacher what they're asking for.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Amanda Nelson. I'm an essential worker. I'm a safe bus driver. I've been driving through a pandemic with very little safeguards. Keolis has slapped the drivers in the face for the last 2.5 years. When is enough enough? It's time to step up. RTC claims to not be a party to negotiations. However, sorry, I lost my place. Comments made by Bill Thomas suggest otherwise. We have been on the streets fighting for our basic rights, fair treatment, and fair wages. The community is suffering and the bus drivers are suffering. It is time to step up and end this. Keolis is giving new drivers a crash course in bus driving. They have a company man passing them through. They train them in a matter of days and throw them on the street in a huge, dangerous vehicles with the members of your community's lives in their hands. Keolis does not care about Washoe County. If and when the strike ends, we will be down to about half of our original drivers. The drivers have been quitting, moving on to better opportunities. We all have a CDL. We can make more money elsewhere and be treated with respect and dignity. What is the city going to do if we all quit? This is what it is coming to. It's time to step up and fix the transit system. You all have the power to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Alejandra Gomez, followed by Terry Brooks, followed by Isla Abatman.
Hello, council members. Hello, Mayor. Thank you for listening. I am a current resident of Reno, and I went to UNR, and I want to bring up the issue about how, obviously we all know that sex trafficking is very prominent in the city and the area around us, and prostitution is legal in the counties around our county. And while you have to be 18 to be legally prostitute, most victims are underage. So currently there are 1,500 children and women being trafficked in the northern Nevada area right now. And I have two options or two suggestions on how to help this issue. I went to UNR and I was told not to go to the Walgreens on Virginia and to never walk alone because it's possible that I could get taken, or I could be harassed, or I can get raped. We need to have more outreach programs. We need to have more education in where there is public jobs and healthcare jobs. For example, I believe that healthcare and educators should have a lot more courses to kind of help identify all the small red flags that there is in sex trafficking because they're not obvious. Around 50 to 80% of victims are seen by a public official or a healthcare provider while they're being trafficked. And if we would just be more educated and know what flags to look for, we could prevent a lot of these issues. Now, housing in Reno is also a really big issue. Currently, there's 2 nonprofit organizations that really help with housing with victims, and it is very limited, and victims are placed in a wait list or in a motel for a week, which is very unsafe and can expose victims to more violence and substance abuse. If these victims can't find permanent housing, which there is no permanent housing programs in Reno, as more than a year, that's where victims can get the most housing right now. They're most likely to be homeless, which costs us more taxpayer dollars to kind of react to these victims that are already homeless, because many of them have already a lot of mental and health issues. If we would just provide preventative care and reactive care instead of act and criminalize homelessness, we would save taxpayer dollars about $20,000 a year per person, as much as it would cost around $31,000 a year to criminalize and keep people homeless. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandra.
You're welcome.
Madam Clerk.
Carrie Brooks, followed by Isla Arbitman, followed by Natalie Handler.
Good morning. It's me, Terry Brooks, again. And today I'd like to address trying to adapt to poor mental health in the case of homelessness. It's hard to adapt to homelessness and to adapt to hunger, too. It's difficult to adapt to poor physical health, and adapting to poor mental health is even harder to do. If you're mentally healthy, you can learn to adapt to change. But if you're not mentally healthy, it's hard to adapt to change. When your mental health declines, it's hard to think with reason, and your perceptions of your surroundings change like season after season. When you have difficulty reasoning, your perceptions aren't as practical. So when you try to make choices, your strategy isn't nearly as tactical. When you were mentally healthy, what you considered as common sense, now with mental stresses, you see as only nonsense. You wind up feeling like you're in a state of confusion, which then can lead to a state of mere delusion. And when you behave in a state of delusion and other people notice it, then you might experience exclusion. So when it comes to mental illness, can you adapt to it? Unfortunately, the answer is you probably cannot do it. So to any options, if you act with resistance, the best way to deal with it is to accept some assistance. You may be in a state where you can't recover alone. And if you are, you need someone to act as sort of a chaperone. So I would like to thank the Reno ambassadors for all that they do. They are there to assist such people in advising them as what to do. I would like to thank everyone who helps the mentally ill. It takes a lot of care and courage to do the roles they fill. And I'd like to thank you all for listening to me today and for trying to adapt to me and all the things I say. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Madam Clerk?
Isla Arbitman, followed by Natalie Handler, followed by Chris Fuqua.
Okay, Ilya Arbitman for the record. So it's another disappointing agenda here with the ineffectual and duplicitous council. On September 1st, the city handed over homeless services to Washoe County. In response to the obvious and anticipated accusation that the council and the city were relinquishing responsibility for those people that need it the most, the response was, no, we're pivoting. We're going to focus on housing, right? Which sounds very promising. The question is, what does that mean? Are we going to see anybody here digging in the dirt, laying down masonry, or framing out a house, right? I don't think so. And as awesome as that would be, right? That's not the role of the city, right? The city is not supposed to be building housing stock. Your tools are not jackhammers and nail guns and things like that. It's ordinances. Your role is to provide guidance, right? To guide the development of the city according to the desires, wishes, and needs of the people that live here, right? And you do that with ordinances and laws. And actually, those things are pretty powerful tools, more powerful than construction tools, because they can basically stipulate the bounds within which developers have to work. What are you doing with those tools, right? The other thing about them is they're pretty quick. So how has this been playing out in the past few months? What have we been seeing? Have we been seeing the city trying to disincentivize empty lots? Have we been seeing the city disincentivizing demolishing of housing stock without building new housing stock? I haven't seen anything like that. All I've seen is, to take an example, the railroading of the Jacobs development. The only tiny little thing there with tiny little teeth was the sewer credit, right, which was supposed to incentivize a developer rebuilding after they had knocked a building down. Instead of holding Jacobs to that, you extended it, basically removing the small disincentive that already existed. So why am I here today? What am I talking about specifically, right? I'm asking the council to actually fulfill your promise of, quote, focusing on housing by starting to introduce some ordinances and laws that make it more difficult for developers to do what they have been doing, which is removing affordable housing and replacing it with nothing. What kind of ordinances are we seeing? Well, today, agenda item E2, right, is yet another piece in the puzzle to criminalize the people that are displaced by developers' rampant demolitions, right? By giving park rangers the authority to ticket, right, what are you doing? You're basically adding another person to the already huge number of city workers whose sole job it is to criminalize people living on the street. When I see something, and everyone will see this on agenda item E2, that says within 350 feet of the Truckee River, right, and agenda item E2 gives park rangers the authority, or will give park rangers the authority to ticket people, within 350 feet of the Truckee River means a homeless person, right? So I really don't understand why you are introducing ordinances to further criminalize those who are in need, rather than introducing ordinances to address the housing crisis. I don't have any specific suggestions today, but we're all bright people up here, so let's actually start thinking about that rather than making the problem worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilya. Madam Clerk?
Natalie Handler, followed by Chris Fuqua, followed by Lily Barron.
For the record, my name is Natalie Handler. Laws that criminalize poverty and homelessness fuel prejudices and stereotypes and spur further criminalization and community divide. This is an excerpt from Decriminalizing Homelessness, Why Right to Rest Legislation is the High Road for Oregon, a report by the ACLU in 2017. I believe this is where we stand today in our community. Many are needlessly suffering, struggling to survive a life without shelter or fear of being the next to lose their home. This is due to a scarcity of low-income and affordable housing, lagging wages, insufficient safe shelter spaces, a lack of universal tenant protections, and rent control. This is not just a housing crisis, but a full-on public health crisis. The City of Reno municipal codes currently make it against the law to engage in life-sustaining activities that are associated with being unhoused. Some of these municipal laws are as follows: no sitting and resting in public places, no sleeping, camping, or lodging in public places, including vehicles, no begging, panhandling, soliciting, and loitering, no storing personal belongings in public places. There is currently insufficient shelter space for multiple demographics, yet it is illegal to sleep, sit, or rest in public. This begs the question, where is one without a house or shelter supposed to rest? How can they exist when harmless, unavoidable behaviors such as sitting or sleeping are treated as criminal activity under these laws? Research shows when comparing the cost of homelessness and its criminalization with the cost of providing housing to the homeless, housing is the most affordable and effective option, not to mention more humane and dignified. Criminalization of poverty only stands to worsen the problem due to compounding financial obligations that cannot be paid and barriers to obtaining public services, employment, and housing, even for minor crimes. These municipal codes make escaping homelessness even more difficult. It is time to declare a housing and homeless state of emergency. Stop passing laws that criminalize homelessness and immediately cease enforcing existing laws and take steps to repeal them. Oppose the Park Ranger pilot program, which will enable rangers to enforce municipal laws which disproportionately harm the poor and unhoused community. Form an intervention service agency staffed by social workers and mental health professionals rather than law enforcement or soft cops to serve people who are underserved, underinsured, disabled, and/or homeless. Dedicate sources of funding to increase availability of low-income affordable housing. Increase staffing to effectively and efficiently facilitate housing services. Years-long waiting lists for housing subsidies is unacceptable during the state of emergency. Utilize existing shelter space, such as the Record Street Shelter, to serve women and families who have nowhere to go due to current capacity issues. Advocate for the state government to enact and enforce the Homeless Bill of Rights, which prohibits criminalization of homelessness. Advocate for the Right to Rest Act, and please advocate for universal tenant protections and rent control. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Madam Clerk.
Chris Fuqua, followed by Lily Barron, followed by Randy Canal.
Good morning. A few of you know who I am. Most of you do not. Most of the members do not. Let me introduce myself. My name is Chris Fuqua. I am the Vice President of Local Teamsters 533. And we represent the members of the Keolis membership here who's on our third strike. And I applaud you guys for being here this morning, for having a quorum. Because as you guys already know, the RTC board had already canceled Friday's meeting because of a lack of quorum. How could the RTC board not plan ahead to ensure they have a quorum? They knew we were going to be putting up, wanting to have the liquidated damages put back on the agenda, and now we won't even have a quorum. The RTC has failed and has been unable to plan ahead, or they are afraid to face the public comments that they will receive at Friday's meeting. Shame on those of you who have not stood up for our essential workers. The Teamsters have reached out to the RTC board, the mayor, and other politicians who have failed to act to prevent this strike. You guys all knew this strike was coming and you failed to prevent it. We put word out. We've told you for months, for years now, that Keolis is a bad actor. Every day, 2,000 people have to find alternative ways to get to work, to go shopping, or to go home. When are you going to stand up for our community and our essential workers? When are you going to stand up to this foreign contractor, Keolis? The transit system is failing this community, not because of the Teamsters workforce, but because of the lack of accountability of the elected politicians and the buddy system approach of propping Bill Thomas up to the position of executive board director of the RTC board. That was the worst choice you guys could have picked. There has been zero accountability throughout the local government and the RTC. This strike shows the RTC's inability to act and hold their foreign contractor, Keolis, accountable. The RTC board could have prevented this strike. We need to stand up for our community, for our bus riding public, and hold Keolis accountable and give our bus operators, mechanics, and maintenance technicians the wages and pensions they deserve. This is all about corporate greed. The difference between 4% and 6% pay raise is roughly less than $700 a year. Keolis likes to throw out numbers that confuse the community. They say they're going to put 25 cents into the pension. Well, that's 10 cents this year, nothing next year, 15 cents year 3. That is shameful. We have over 40 outstanding arbitrations against Keolis and numerous unfair labor practices against this French-based contractor. I encourage all of you to reach out to the RTC board and other community leaders and get Keolis back to the table and give us an economic proposal that our members will pass. The community will remember which politicians stood up for essential workers and community. If the politicians will not hold their French contractor accountable,
Thank you,
the
Chris.
community will.
Thank you, Chris. Madam Clerk?
Lily Barron, followed by Randy Canal.
Good morning. My name is Lily Barron. For the record, LILYBARAN. I am here to thank specifically Callie and her team for their hard work in the redistricting process on behalf of the ACLU of Nevada. We know that there were some issues that came up during the hearing, but we want to thank her for her openness and transparency, and that the city of Reno was hands down the best of all of the municipalities that the ACLU worked with statewide. We commend her on her extreme efforts and just being an amazing person. We commented on maps at Henderson, City of Las Vegas, Clark County, and CCSD, but the process here should be a model for the rest of the state, including the Nevada legislature. So thank you very much, Callie.
Thank you very much, Lily. Madam Clerk?
Randy Canal.
Good morning. For the record, my name's Randy Canale. I am training coordinator for the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Apprenticeship Program. I'm also president of the Northern Nevada Apprenticeship Coordinators Association, who run the apprenticeship programs for the Northern Nevada Building and Construction Trades Council. I'm here on not quite so serious business as you've heard so far this morning. I'm here to ask you to celebrate with us National Apprenticeship Week. National Apprenticeship Week is this week, and as you know, it's an Earn While You Learn program, which reaches out to a diverse community, offering all participants an opportunity to make a livable wage, get a career, not just a job, earn a good living, have benefits, insurance, all these types of things, retirement funds that are all for all the members that take part. As you may note in some packets that were given to you earlier, we currently have over 700 apprentices in Northern Nevada Building and Construction Trades Council apprenticeship programs. But for statewide numbers, there's currently 71 apprenticeship programs with over 5,991 apprentices in those programs. Our programs represent, among other people, the bricklayers, construction craft laborers, electricians, heat and frost insulators, iron workers, operating engineers, painters and allied trades, plasterers and cement masons, plumbers, pipe fitters, and HVAC service techs, sheet metal workers, and NV Energy apprenticeships for electricians, linemen, fitters, and welders, and we will be bringing on elevator constructors here in the near future. Again, we are preparing Northern Nevada's workers for the high-tech advanced construction jobs, and we are creating the workforce that is needed to continue to attract the many innovative businesses our area is wanting to be able to diversify our economy and keep it thriving. We are here to welcome you to come tour our facilities if you would like. Some of you actually have and have been to some of our facilities. And we want to make sure that you know, again, that these apprenticeship programs through our organizations aren't just an alternative to college, they actually are college. You earn college credit going through all of our programs, and some of the programs, such as the electricians, even have an associate's degree associated with it as you turn out. So again, I want to welcome you to come to our sites. Oh, and one other thing, we are also currently now working with the Washoe County School District in implementing the MC3, which is a master core curriculum, which will provide a pathway for students from Washoe County School District to have a more direct access into these apprenticeship programs. And we're working on getting grants with them to be able to fund these programs to help them out in these times of of, I won't say financial need, but sorry about that, I will say. But thank you, and hope you celebrate National Apprenticeship Week with us.
Mr. Canale, thank you for being here. I wanted to also recognize Spark City Council Member Diane Vanderwell, and this is a very important week, and we do recognize that. I know that the city has, and the mayor has prepared a proclamation, but we had a problem getting it printed, so we'll have to get it to you just a little later. But thank you so much for being here and sharing the importance of these programs. They're really one of the critical pieces to allowing people to enter into and stay in the middle class, so thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Madam Vice Mayor, with that, we have no additional public comment registered. It should be noted for the record that we've received 13 letters of correspondence via reno.gov online public comment form or by email to our office. These letters were distributed to the Reno City Council and are available to the public on reno.gov meeting portal, 5 in opposition and 8 concerned on various topics. And we will transition to the one voicemail we have related to item A3.
Hi, I live in Sparks, which may not be Reno. However, I'm sure Lennar has got one of their bases in Reno, Lennar Homes, that is. They're building out here in Kylie Ranch. I live in a Lennar home, and they don't seem to care. The foreman and, of course, the workers, they don't speak a lick of English, so, you know, there's no use talking to them, and the foreman doesn't care. But I can block out the noise with the building of homes. However, those of us out here near Kylie Ranch, out here in Sparks, off of Pyramid Highway and Wingfield Hills Road / Lazy 5 Parkway anyway, we sleep during the day because guess what? We work nights at a casino in, wait, what is this again? Nevada, that's right. It's a what is that again? It's a 24-hour state, I believe. Yeah. So these workers need to be told that they should not and cannot be blasting music at full volume from their work trucks while they're working on homes, because guess where that noise goes to? It echoes in every single valley, in every single canyon, and, well, I'm just across the waterway from where they're building, so, yeah, when they're blasting their music at full volume, I can hear it, and it wakes me up, and this is during the day when I'm trying to sleep, because guess what? You all party at night, right? I imagine, and you all party at one of the casinos I know for sure that I work at during the nighttime, and guess what? What happens is, if all this keeps going on, nobody's going to be working nights anymore, and that means nobody's going to be working tonight, and since there's no state taxes here, that means the state will be losing revenue from the casinos. And you know what? These workers need to be told also to slow down while they're driving, because you can check with the City of Sparks Police Department. There was an accident at 7 to 7:30 a.m. this morning, the 15th, Monday of November 2021, where a workman's truck, he was going way too fast roundabout, and guess what? Tipped his truck over right near a high school, the new high school you guys built. Hello? Wake up, you guys, Nevada.
All right, Madam Mayor, with that, we have no additional public comments.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay. Item A4, may I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Actually, Madam Mayor, I do have one
Oh, you
change
have some
before we do
updates?
that.
Okay, go ahead.
On the consent agenda, item B1, the SAD guidelines, they were not meant for this agenda. It's an administrative error on my part, and so I'd like to pull that from the agenda today. Thank you.
Move to approve with those changes.
Second.
All right, thank you so much. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, consent agenda. I'm going to start with Councilwoman Weber. Nothing? Councilwoman Dewar?
I didn't have my phone on. Would you come back to me, please?
Vice Mayor Jordan?
None, thank you.
Councilman Delgado?
Nothing.
Councilman Reese? Councilman Breckus?
None, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that being said.
And
may
I
get-
also had none.
None? Okay. May I get a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, moving along, Madam Clerk, am I correct? Item B2?
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, we're moving on to item E1, which is an ordinance introduction to be read by the city attorney.
E1.
B1, okay.
E1.
Did you say C1?
E1.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, got it. All right.
E1, ordinance introduction, bill number 7192, ordinance to amend Title 8, Chapter 8.10 of the Reno Municipal Code entitled Offenses Against Property, creating new ordinance, RMC 8.10.110, prohibiting possession of a catalytic converter unless otherwise permitted, and other matters properly relating thereto.
Madam Mayor, unless the council desires more discussion, I'm prepared to move to refer for the second reading and adoption.
All right, thank you so much. I have a motion, I have a second. Councilwoman Breckus?
I just want to commend staff. I think we asked them to write a letter to people in the industry, and they did that. The letter was very well written, explanatory, so I want to thank staff for that effort.
All right, well, that's appreciated. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much.
Item E2, ordinance introduction, bill number 7193, ordinance amending Reno Municipal Code, Title 8.23, Parks and Recreation, Chapter 8.23.035, Authority of Park Rangers to provide for expansion of jurisdiction from only parks and recreation facilities to also include all city trails, open spaces, and public property within 350 feet of the shore of the Truckee River within city limits, together with other matters properly relating thereto.
All right, thank you so much. Madam Clerk, do you have any public comment on this item?
Madam Mayor, we do have public comment, and additionally, we did have a public commenter registered for the consent agenda. I apologize.
Okay.
So I'm going to just let both of them speak now if
Perfect.
the body's open to that. So our first public commenter is Miriam Esparza.
Good morning. My name is Miriam Esparza. I'm here on behalf of Latino Arte and Culture. I'm actually one of their board members. I've also participated in a lot of their plays, so I've been an actress with them for about 8 years now. I am also the teacher. We do workshops for children. We teach them the skills of acting, interacting with other kids. Unfortunately, that was halted by COVID, like a lot of the other businesses. I'm just here to give thanks to Councilman Devon Reese for his support towards the LGBTQI plus Latinx community. We are doing a play next year, so we would like to thank you for your support. A lot of actors are gonna benefit from this, not to mention how the community is gonna benefit from our plays. Our plays are built to educate our community. They're not just with the purpose of entertaining. They are very educational for the community. Now more than ever, I think it's important that we teach our community, especially through this means. I think a lot of people will benefit from what we have to teach. Like I said, it's not just with the purpose of entertaining, but it's more with the purpose of educating the community so that we can have a better community and we can have people who get along with others. I think it's a time where we need that. I think the community really needs that. And I was just here just to basically thank you for the support that you've given to the theater. We're actually the only bilingual theater company in the northern part of the state. So I was just here to thank you for the support.
Thank you, Miriam, and thank you, Councilman Reese. Thank you very much. Councilman Delgado.
Our next public commenter for E2 is Lily Barron.
hello again. Lily Barron for the record, LILYBARAN, on behalf of the ACLU of Nevada. We are frustrated at the constant pattern that we're seeing from the city of Reno that suggests that public safety, the public policy of the city is to access goods, services, and parks for one class, and public spaces are available for one class and not another. We hear you at C-Hub and council meetings talking about the great pride you have in the fact that you have moved the unhoused population from downtown Reno without understanding how inhumane it sounds. Unhoused people have a right to access public spaces that we all enjoy without being harassed, cited, or moved. We are seeing ordinance after ordinance to discriminate and criminalize poverty, such as the WHIP ordinance, camping ordinance, single-cell liquor sales, and now this ranger implementation. They all have damaging effects that are invisible to most housed people like yourselves and myself, but they have harsh implications on those that are most vulnerable. As you have been reminded by advocates and directly impacted at nearly every recent meeting, that punitive interactions such as citations for loitering limit access to services. Studies indicate that even in cities where citations to the community court are issued, the unhoused are rarely, if ever, offered services that they weren't already aware of and utilize. And now, instead of those services, they become mandatory, and they come with an exhaustive extra task, such as getting signatures and going to and from the courthouse, which, as you know, is very far away from the area of town you have forced most of these people to go. It has been proven that anti-homeless laws and enforcement fail to reduce disorder and instead push people with nowhere to go through neighborhoods playing cat and mouse with law enforcement entities. Consistent disciplinary interactions with officials that don't result in arrest still do material and physiological harm. They reproduce homelessness and deepen racial, gender, and health inequalities among the urban poor. We currently have Reno ambassadors, clean and safe team, patrol cars. What good could adding another entity really do? We're again urging you to take a different approach. There are still many women and families, some of which we are supporting on our own right now because there's nowhere that is suitable for them to go. And these policies that shuffle people around seem to be the focus rather than solution-based housing first models, as you've heard before. If anyone would like to refer to some of these studies that I have been citing, I can provide you with the academic study. Thank you.
All right, Madam Mayor, with that, we have no additional public comment.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so, I guess we're gonna send it to staff. Hi, Jamie, how you doing?
Good morning. I am on the mend, thank you. For the record, Jamie Schroeder, Director of Parks and Recreation. I do have a presentation prepared if council so desires. Okay, great. So, let's see, yes, this was working, good. The Park Ranger program was actually originally established back in 1995, and the primary purpose really was to create, individuals in the park that can interact with the citizens that are using our parks. And so they were focused really on public relations, customer service, and then really by doing those two things, you really see an increased safety of parks and facilities. That program was well received, and but unfortunately in 2008, we had that Great Recession, and the tough decision had to be made, in which these positions were eliminated, as well as about half of the Parks and Recreation Department in general. Fast forward to fiscal year 21-22 budget, and our times are in such that we're able to add back to our team, and 2 park ranger positions were approved, as well as 2 park maintenance workers. So based on how the program was operated back in the 90s, we are currently going to revitalize this program using the same initial outline for roughly the first year, and then we will make adjustments as we learn from this first year. So the Rangers will operate in a pair Monday through Friday from 7 to 4. And then depending on time of year, like during special event seasons, we will be able to either shift their schedules or they'll work some overtime. training is a huge thing in the world of Parks and Recreation. We always talk about in our team that the best way to make sure that our operations are good is through communications and training. And so the Rangers this is a list of some of the training that they are receiving. And we are working very closely with all the different departments that the Rangers will be working with. Just recently on Monday, they completed a training that was focused on outreach best practices, as well as all the different available community resources that are out there that they can refer people to. Park ranger duties. So this is not an entirely inclusive list, but it is something that is sort of their main primary duties. It's the best way to summarize it is that our park rangers, there's kind of 4 categories, right? Initially, we always want them to do education in our parks, right? So people may not know that they need to have their dog on a leash. They will approach the park users and say, you must have your dog on a leash. Folks may not understand that we have a shelter rental for a birthday party, and the Rangers will have to go and clarify that and move one group out because they didn't reserve it, and move the group in that actually rightfully has that temporary access to that facility. So education is part 1, outreach is part 2, enforcement is part 3, and then maintenance and restoration is part 4. So this is just kind of the 4 broad categories, and then the slide in front of you sort of shows a little bit more specific examples of what those look like. So based on how the Park Ranger program was, this is another short list of things that the Rangers already have the ability to do. Again, we're hoping to do education and outreach first before having to get to the level of enforcement and writing citations. But I do want to point out that you'll see on this list, there are things that our Rangers are responsible for helping us to address, that are not necessarily related to our houseless population. One of the big things we have is issues with motorized vehicles on trails. Vandalism is skyrocketing in our parks right now all throughout the city. It's not limited to just one area. We get tons of complaints about off-leash dogs. And then, as I had mentioned earlier, during the spring, summer, when we have a lot of facility rentals, the park rangers would be very handy in being able to do some conflict resolution there. So I just want to remind everybody, we are fortunate to have an amazing park system. So this slide summarizes all of the amenities that the city of Reno offers to our community. And you've heard me say before, Parks and Recreation is always focused on 3 specific pillars, right? Social equity, health and wellness, and then preservation of open space. And I think we do a really good job of providing those services to the community. So what you see in green is what the Rangers are already able to do, right? This is the jurisdiction that they have the ability to assist with should we have any need for them. What you see in black are those 3 bullets that the Ordinance Amendment would allow them to be able to actually assist with. And I just want to point out 2,100 acres of open space. Let that sink in. That is a lot of open space that we don't have any ability to do any enforcement on unless we call a police officer. And we all know that the police officers are well taxed with all the other things they need to do. In addition to that 2,100 acres of open space, almost 36 miles of trails. That is a lot of trail mileage that we often have issues with. So I wanted to show a map of what open space looks like. So this map shows all the different zoning, and where you see everything in green, that's an example of all the open space that the Rangers do not currently have the authority to do any education enforcement outreach at. And so this is where that amendment would greatly benefit. So this area is in Northwest Reno. Sierra Vista Park is, let's see, I don't have a mouse, but Sierra Vista Park is kind of that upper left green. And then you will also see down towards the bottom right of the screen some trails right there. And one of the biggest problems we have right now is folks taking ATVs or dirt bikes and blowing through those trails. So with the ordinance amendment, this would allow our rangers to be able to do some education and outreach and let the trail users that want to use motorized vehicles teach them that there are motorized vehicle trails, they're just not right here in the neighborhood. Just wanted to give a prime example of what we hope to have our rangers do. So the ordinance amendment, again, the rangers already have the ability to do some work in our parks and recreation facilities. And what we are asking council to consider today would be to add all of the city trails, all of our open space acreage, and yes, public property within 350 feet of the shore of the Truckee River within city limits.
All right, is that it?
That's it.
All right, thank you so much, Jamie. Okay, at this time, I am going to send it to Councilwoman Dunn.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Jamie, for the presentation. I thought we had said when this was going to come forward that we were going to get a comprehensive presentation on how this interfaced with the all the other personnel, in particular, who was working which shifts and who was covering what. So I'm not sure if that's something you're prepared to do today, but I appreciate the open space comments about the trail access. That's something in Ward 5 that I get a fair number of concerns and complaints about people with off-road vehicles accessing in areas that they're not supposed to be. But I do notice a fair amount of that is at night. And I'm noticing that the hours of these park rangers is not at night. So I don't know if city manager or you would like to comment on when are the night hours. That's when I get the majority in my ward of comments and concerns or overnight.
Sure, yeah. So that first initial year, we want to make sure that the rangers get all the training and get that experience that they need and they get to know the community. Year 2 is when we're hoping to do staggered shifts. We split them apart, and then there will be a ranger on duty basically 7 days a week. One will start in the morning and one will start in the afternoon. So we just want to be smart about phasing it in. And then that's not to say that if we want to do an operation, because we know that this spring you're going to see another increase in ATV users going on the trails. And so our rangers will have the flexibility to work outside of their normal operating hours in year 1 to do sort of those outreach events. And if they know it's happening Saturday morning at, or Saturday night at, 6 o'clock, then the rangers will shift their schedules so that they can go ahead and do some work during that time.
So like a targeted effort based upon calls for service and hours in which those, okay. I appreciate that.
And we do...
And then the coordination with the other additional individuals that we've added on.
Yes.
Or
and we
other
do,
entities have added on.
Yeah. We've got the clean and safe chart that we can bring up if you want Ms. Esparza to go through how the whole operation works. And so I will turn it over to her if Brian can pull up that chart.
And I apologize if I was jumping ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't know there was another phase to the presentation. Okay. Oh, there wasn't. Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Cynthia Esparza with the City Manager's Office for the record. We'll wait for this to go up. The Clean and Safe team, we recently put together an organizational chart to highlight the various components of the work that we're doing, but specifically how the park rangers tie into the larger picture, along with the additional positions that were budgeted and approved this last budget cycle, which includes, in addition to the park rangers, 1 program assistant and the 4 most team members, which includes 1 supervisor and 3 clinicians. I think what we had before us is what initially started as a pilot program has really grown, and our operational roles have become defined as a team, and those are education, outreach, enforcement, and restoration. So within each of the departments, you'll see we are highlighting who is involved with our education, our outreach, and enforcement. We also added our community partners who are integral to everything we do. That we added the CARES campus there, NDOT, Keep Trucking Meadows Beautiful. In addition to that, we also have our contracted partners who include the Reno Downtown Reno Partnership, the 3 park ambassadors that were recently approved, the Karma Box, and also Qualicon, who's our service provider. I'm happy to answer any questions on this org chart.
No, I have a question, if I may, Madam Mayor.
Hold on, we've got Councilwoman Dorr, and then we'll go to you. Go ahead.
Well, I've seen this already. I don't have a question, so I'll defer and you can come back to me.
Okay.
Ms. Esparza, does the Clean and Safe team have a mission statement?
You know, we do not have anything that has been approved by the team, but when the program was established, it was to address public health hazards in the community and public safety hazards. But really, our work has transitioned to those 4 team operational roles.
Yeah.
Of education, outreach, enforcement, and restoration.
Oh, the ones that
Right.
Ms. Schroeder mentioned? Okay. It might be nice to think about a very succinct mission statement, Mr. Manager, because it is so cross-cutting. You know, you're mentioning all these different agencies, and I think that would help cement in everyone's mind, you know, what we're about, what we're doing, what our focus is. And I think it'd be helpful, you know, for us to know also what we're committing this, you know, resources to.
Absolutely.
And I remember when we adopted it, or I think it was even administratively established, you know, there were staff reports and we've talked about it budget, but I think it's something that should drill up to maybe a mission statement of some sort.
Great, thank you.
Councilwoman Dorr.
Yeah, thank you. I would like Jamie back up if we could. So Jamie, specifically on the parks rangers, I'd gotten a lot of my questions answered, so I thank you for the thorough briefing. But one thing I wanted to make sure I get understood on the record, I guess, when I first arrived, we had park rangers. So we had at least one. I met him. I talked to him. I actually went out on a tour with him. So when you call this a pilot, so that person, what I mostly saw them do was clean up trash along the river, talk to people, help them, assist them. And I thought it was amazing. And that's why I've been advocating, and I'm so excited that you've brought this back. I know that staffing has been challenging. And you brought it back not only with 1, but with 2. Could you just tell us, you went over a really thorough presentation, but the pilot aspect, is it about moving away from the river as well to the other parks? And I have a second question too. The second question is it only in designated parks? You mentioned open space. My example is we have the Virginia Range, which is open space but not a designated park. But that is a place right next to our residents in our sphere that people are always recreating. I've seen up in north of Somerset, people recreating in open spaces that aren't designated parks. So the 2 questions are, what's unique about this as compared to the original project? And then where do they go? Can they go in other spaces that aren't designated parks or only in parks?
Sure. So the first question, I'm not really calling it a pilot program per se. I mean, we know it worked back in the mid-90s.
Exactly.
We just know that society has changed quite a bit since the mid-90s, right? So since the program worked so successfully, I am a big believer in not recreating the wheel. However, I do like to tweak things based on what makes sense. And so that's why this first year, we want to just stick with how the program used to operate and see how that goes. Yes, there's going to be a lot of time spent at the river because we get a lot of calls for service at the river. But ideally, as I had put on that slide, your park system is so grandiose and it goes, to our city borders. And we want to be able to have our rangers have a presence in all of our parks all throughout the community. The ordinance, for question 2, the ordinance really only allows the park rangers to be on City of Reno property. Okay. So if there's open space that is BLM, our rangers wouldn't necessarily be able to take enforcement. However, I imagine they're going to have relationship with the BLM and be able to notify them if there are some issues that are occurring out there.
It's these interface issues, as you know, right? Where city meets BLM or public space. people are recreating back and forth. So I just wanted to better understand that. And then there's just 2 right now. I had heard that Washoe County either is soon to approve a similar to rangers or has already. Could you speak to that?
Sure. Washoe County already has a park ranger system. I don't know truly how many they have, but I would say it's certainly more than 2. I think they have multiple rangers assigned to their different regional parks. And then Carson City also has a ranger program as well. I think it's important to note that all of the ranger programs, the rangers are not post-certified. They are unarmed because, again, their primary purpose is really that education and outreach piece first.
Can we think of them as like National Park Service Rangers, similar type of job, or?
Similar, but because they're in an urban area, like sometimes the national parks rangers, because they're in such remote areas, they will be post-certified. But typically you'll see in municipal governments and counties that those rangers are not necessarily post-certified.
All right, thank you.
All right. Any other questions from council? Councilman Breckus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The question I had, the contracts, agreements we have with all the ditch companies and their walking paths, those agreements allow us to deploy the rangers on those ditch easements?
I don't believe they do, so we would have to do some research into that to find out, because again, the ordinance speaks to public property, not necessarily private property.
Okay.
But I can work with the attorney's team to find out better information for you on that.
Yeah, because, when you say city trails, those agreements, I think contemplate them being recreational facilities in addition to the maintenance responsibilities of stormwater. So I think that's a point to narrow down in my view, because we have a lot of those miles of trails, and those are, areas where questions and, concerns are raised sometimes. And then we have a fair amount of parks, not necessarily in Ward 1, but that are HOA maintained, correct? Now, are those going to be on the patrol routes for the rangers also, do you think?
So that, again, it'll depend. If the land was dedicated to the city of Reno and it's city property, but the agreement is that the HOA is maintaining it, then yes, the rangers would have jurisdiction over it.
Okay. So the outstanding one really is going to be those, the lands covered by the ditch agreements. Okay, well, I'll look forward. Maybe you could have that for the second reading. Let us know what you think.
I think so, yeah. I think it should be some quick research.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Jordan.
Thank you very much. I think this is great. I think there's been, a need for this for quite some time, and I appreciate the presentation and the coordination with all the other resources to make sure everything's working, not duplicating, but rather augmenting each other. I think that's really, really important. My concern is the vast nature of the coverage area and just the sheer volume. So I'm going to go back to when it comes to your deployment of these individuals. Is that going to be purely calls for service driven? Is there another mechanism by which, who is contacting whom to say, here's a hotspot area where we're seeing a lot of off-road vehicles, accessing an area? Are those from council to be directed to you? Is it all purely call volume?
So it'll be a balance between what we see occurring in our parks, right? We have our park maintainers that are out there that are definitely eyes and ears on what's happening in the parks, as well as calls that get sent into Reno Direct. We're always encouraging people, if it's not a life safety issue, call Reno Direct. If it is a life safety issue, call 911. And then there's also the proactive things that we're going to want to try to implement at the same time. So it's really going to have to be a daily look of, okay, what do we need to address right away on the daily basis, and then what are the things that we can now address proactively because we're caught up on all of those daily needs. Certainly the amount of square footage that they need to cover, we're not going to be able to get to everything. It's similar to our park maintainers. We just don't have enough staff. However, I want to make sure that everybody understands how grateful we are that we have the ability to start growing our programs again so that we can eventually get to where we want to be.
So if you see, I'm just going to play out a scenario, if you see a significant number or a spike in, say, fires being set along the river, they are nimble enough to shift their resources and their hours to help address clearly a safety issue, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, Councilman Reese.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Schroeder, I think that I find myself kind of in a difficult place because there are elements of the program that I think are absolutely appropriate and worthwhile, meaning trying to stop kids from destroying trail systems or people from vandalizing areas of town or just general making sure that parks are available to everyone are things that we all, I think, would agree in principle with. But of course, I'm also mindful of this ongoing conversation we're having in this community surrounding the Boise v. Martin decision, how we interact with and treat our unsheltered population. And where I struggle with is that I fundamentally do not believe that we can criminalize our way out of homelessness. And so some of the things that are on the slide sort of slide into that area where I'm not willing to go. And so I need to sit a bit more with it. I've certainly read the ACLU's policy positions on the transcarceration of homelessness. Chris Herring's work is informative, although not entirely on all fours with what I think has gone on in this community. A lot of the work that some homeless advocates do is they focus on very large cities with very different kinds of policing models than we have here. But some of the work is informative. And so that's where I struggle. I want to know with certainty that we're not trying to criminalize a person's things that they need to survive. For example, urinating in public, right? We criminalize that when it's I'll say a drunk college student who's at a concert, right? I think it's more difficult when it becomes someone who has no other place to urinate. And so this is the balance that I'm trying to figure out. And I don't know if we've yet achieved it. We're in a first reading, so I'm willing to explore that concept as we go further. But I just think it's a difficult place for us to be because we're trying to have ways in which we respond sort of compassionately with our unsheltered population. I do believe in much of the work that the community court is doing. I spent some time yesterday with Judge Riggs talking about the community court. She's obviously no longer there, but Judge Hazlett Stevens has taken on the mantle. And in compassion, we say we want people to get services, but I'm not sure yet, and I'll have to spend some time with those folks understanding if one receives a ticket, does one actually translate that into receiving services? I think some of the national examinations of that say no. I don't know what our current, what it would tell us anecdotally here locally about that. So that's where I am, and so the body understands. I want for us to have vibrant and safe parks and open spaces for everyone to enjoy. I believe we all do. What I do not want to do is be seen as really targeting a particular people group who have no opportunity to do the incidental issues of life otherwise. So I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, thank you. If I may comment back on that. So, in the world of parks and recreation, we all know that, the issue of homelessness and being, houseless is not a simple one. And to fix it, it is not simple. It is very complex. And I think our Clean and Safe program overall shows that we understand you cannot arrest your way out of this problem. That is not the solution. And so by putting together our Clean and Safe team and trying to figure out, there are so many resources out there that we want to try to make sure that every individual has the opportunity to accept those resources. And so the purpose of bringing park rangers is not to arrest anybody in our parks. Unless we get to that level where someone has, completely destroyed a trail and we were lucky enough to catch them in that act. But for the most part of what our ranger program is, again, it goes back to we want to do education first, then outreach, and then if we have to take enforcement, we take enforcement. So that is not enforcement and arresting everyone that may be violating rules in our parks and laws. That's not our first plan of attack because we don't want to criminalize that. We want people to be able to hang out in our parks.
Well, and I suppose that depends on who you hire, right? So I appreciate the thought.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Reese. one of the things too, I just want to make very clear, because when we talk about criminalizing this, you know, there was also this sentiment that, you know, maybe not using the police department is the best aspect when we're dealing with the river. So we thought this was a very good idea, and not to mention, we know that it's had years and years of success. I studied Boise's river and the things that they do for a whole host of different reasons. I want to point out too that I think, listen, I know people were very angry with me about getting people off of the river, but it can be very, very dangerous. If we have a fire or a flood, you could lose hundreds of people. And you know what they would say to me? Mayor Sheevy, why didn't you move them? You kept them in a very dangerous situation. You let them stay there. That's exactly what they would say. And we don't want anyone to ever drown, or the fires that we've seen down there. And it's not about that. Listen, we have a major issue in the summertime with college kids drinking on there, getting in those rafts, and some have drowned, some have hit their heads on rocks. It's not about that. But what I do think, it needs to be a river that everyone can enjoy, all of us. Because honestly, when people are down there and trying to recreate, and then they come across trash or needles or things that can be hazardous, it's problematic. But it has to be for everyone, right? So here we are trying to say, you're right, we don't want to use the police. That's not a good solution at all. But I also want to remind everyone, it's also our drinking water. So I'm very passionate about this and making sure it's a river that we can all use and keeping it safe. You know, so I really want to commend you. I sincerely appreciate it. So thank you so much. All right, any other questions? Councilman Reese.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I wanted to make sure that I was clear with you, Ms. Schroeder. There are many things that the park rangers that can do that I think are outstanding uses of that resource. Again, I don't think that everything we do has to address everything we do at all the times, but I want us to make sure that we're being consistent. So things like, you know, parking enforcement. If someone's parking illegally in a handicap space, I want to make sure that people who are truly needing that parking space have access to it. You know, I drive through Mary Bennett Park there on the river probably once a week, twice a week, just to see what it is. It's a good barometer for what's going on in that particular environment. And I have on more than one occasion come across folks who are parked in a handicapped space that do not have the indicia of needing that space with a placard. So that does worry me, because there are people who need to have access to that park and its facilities for that. So no problem there. Again, it's more thinking about globally, what are we trying to do? Obviously, I don't believe the heavy hand of criminal enforcement is going to be the solution, unless it is, when it is someone who's destroying a park bathroom or destroying a trail or even shrubs or trees, any of that. But it all comes down to how it's enforced and what is the mindset of the folks who are operating in that space. I sort of think of park rangers as, you know, the happy-go-lucky group that on Parks and Rec, you know, they have a different colored shirt. Maybe it's khaki with green bottoms, and they pass out stickers to children. You know, they're there as a representative of the park system. And so I just want to make sure that our intention is pure and not motivated by ill will towards anyone, which I don't believe that your department has ever exhibited that. I also agree with the mayor that a softer approach than, you know, having some person who's in a uniform that maybe causes a person to react poorly to it is not the solution, right? I think we can have more positive interactions with all of our public if there's not the fear that comes along with some interactions that people do have. So I think the program is good. It has good intentions. I want to make sure that we fine tune it and are clear about what our goal is. I mean, Councilmember Breckus is right. Even with regard to the Clean and Safe team, having a mission statement to kind of latch yourself to is very critical, I think, for how one conducts the day-to-day operations. Thank you.
Thank you. And if council may indulge me a little bit, I wanted to make sure I gave credit to our entire parks crew. You know, our maintainers are in the parks every day, and they we are a compassionate bunch, and a lot of our maintainers make it a point to establish relationships with anybody in our park that is there on a regular basis, because they know that the work they do helps provide some sort of a recreational aspect for any of our park users. And so it's important to me to make sure that the crews get credit for all of the work they do and for the compassion that they do with educating as well, and making sure that people get what they need when they're in our park. So thank you for letting me get that on the record for the proud, being proud of how our team works.
And honestly, you guys are doing a tremendous job. And one thing I know about you, Jamie, because I've worked with you for years, you guys are so compassionate and so willing to help, every step of the way. And so I just honestly, you have put a lot of heart and soul into this. And, it's been tough because we know we did all that work with Bloomberg and Harvard, looking at the river. So we've done a really, really comprehensive deep dive. And to be honest with you, it's gotten out of control. I'm just going to call it out. It's gotten out of control down at the river. And it's not, any particular group. It's a lot of different variables that are happening down there. And we have to address it because a lot of our residents can't even use it for recreation. And that's what it needs to be there for. And it needs to be there for clean water and safety. I think honestly, if we let people stay there, it's only going to be more dangerous for them and for others. And that's not right. That's not right. I'm sorry. It's just not right. I know you're shaking your head at me, but I've got to tell you guys, if we have a fire or a flood, it's dangerous. Very, very dangerous. So I appreciate you so much for your time and your energy and your compassion. We've had countless conversations about this, and I think you guys have done a tremendous job, so I'm very grateful.
Thank you.
All right, Councilwoman Jordan.
Move to refer.
I have a motion, I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I'm happy to meet with you girls at any time. No, I just asked you, I said, do you want to meet this weekend? I just said, do you want to meet this weekend? No, you're standing there commenting and I want to address it.
I'm not allowed to comment to you individually. I don't think I would appreciate the same.
Lily, you can come up anytime. Public comment. Yes, public comment. So.
Lily Barron for the record. This is totally, I feel like, against your meeting practices, but I'm not running your meeting. One major concern is that other cities who have implemented park ranger systems later on end up arming them. So I would like something that is implemented, making sure that that is not something that can be voted on in the future, because that is a trend that happens with other cities. So that is a concern as well.
I 100% agree with you. Absolutely.
Yeah, because other cities, this is a bad example because it's a bigger city, but Los Angeles did pass a measure very similar to this, and then it became apparent that it was unsafe for folks to have these interactions, so their council voted to arm these rangers, and I don't really think that we need more guns. However, in response to the trash and all of this kind of stuff, sharps containers, trash cans, volunteers, all of those are also amenable solutions to the issue that don't involve another person's interaction, putting either person in harm's way. I have yet to see a part of the river that people cannot recreate. I walk down the river weekly. I've never seen that. So I'm wondering what area specifically you're walking in, because I live right downtown. I walk down the river all the time. Sure, people do live there, but again, housing will also ultimately solve that issue rather than displacing folks. So yes, look forward to meeting with you.
And I agree with you on that, so thank you, Lily. All right, Madam Clerk, I'm sending it back to you.
All right, Madam Mayor, we're moving on to item E3, an ordinance introduction to be read by the City Attorney's Office.
Ordinance introduction, bill number 7194, ordinance to amend Title I, Chapter 1.02.010 of the Reno Municipal Code, titled Ward Boundaries and Official City Map, to change the City of Reno ward boundaries on the official city map as required by Section 1.050 of the Reno City Charter, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. This item was continued from the November 10th, 2021 council meeting.
All right, Madam Clerk, do you have any public comment on this item?
Madam Mayor, we did receive 2 comments directly associated with this item as concerned. And additionally, we have 2 voicemails, which we will play at this time.
All right, thanks.
To get started, I wanted to tell you that I have a vested interest in the proposed boundaries for Ward 2. I moved to this area specifically to this address on the north side of Moana because it is close to my place of worship at the time, Temple Emmanuel Synagogue on Lakeside, which is south of Moana. My practice of Judaism was to try to walk to Temple on Shabbat rather than to drive a car. Later on, Chabad became part of our community, and they were even closer. It was nice to be able to dress in your best and yet respect Torah law by walking to synagogue. For me to stand before my God that I love and respect in my best is a sign not only of love, but of adoration as well. There is also the additional consideration of the Atlantis Resort, which you seem to want to thoughtlessly toss into another ward. I have lived in Reno since 1978, and for me, Jewish celebrations take place in one of 3 places: the Atlantis, Temple Emmanuel, and Chabad. In the last 40 years, I have gone to only one Jewish event outside of these 3 places. There are many others like me who live on Barham, in Country Club Acres, and in the Robin Hood neighborhood who go to both of the synagogues to worship and learn and to the Atlantis to socialize. So what does your current proposal for redistricting end up doing for the Reno Jewish community? You are dividing and conquering. Whether intended or not, you are weakening the Jewish vote in Reno, Nevada. That is voter suppression. We are represented by a council member who is also Jewish, the first Jewish representative on the city council in decades. She has done much to improve this city. Now you are talking about taking her away from us and splitting us all up. This leaves me with a question of why. Why would you want to break up our little community? We are just a small community within a community, and we want to stay together. I close with a plea asking you to reconsider your point of division for Ward 2. Why not use Plum Lane, or less preferably Brinkby Lane? Both are natural demarcation lines that would help keep our community whole. Thank you for your time and consideration. Rivka Strom.
Yes, I'm calling to try to get through to either the mayor or somebody on her staff, please. I am a very disgruntled, at this point, transit customer for RTC, and this strike situation is above and beyond at this point. I rely on my buses, like many other people in this community, to get to and from work, to get to and from the VA, to get to shopping, etc. I am very unhappy with this third strike. And if there's anything, any way that Mayor Sheeby can intervene here and try to get these negotiations and get them to sign that contract, this would be well appreciated. I understand she was instrumental in getting them to the table on the first strike. So this is very important, and it is definitely a very important community affair that I think she should be involved with. If you would be so kind as to call me back, please. My name is Richard Glacier, 775-857-0084, because I would like to hear your input on this. We've got to do something. We've got to get these drivers back, and we've got to get these buses back running again. This is terrible. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, with that, we have no additional public comment.
All right, thank you.
All right, good morning. I often don't get to say morning when I'm here. Usually I'm late in the day.
I know.
Well, Madam Mayor and members of council, thanks for having me here today. I'm Callie Wilsey, for the record, with the City Manager's Office. I am joined today by members of our consulting team with Flow Analytics. They are on Zoom with us today, both Ms. Sarah Seeloff and Mr. Ben Maloney, who will be helping me with a portion of this presentation and available to answer questions. Our presentation is shorter than last week, as it's a continuation of our conversation that we had on redistricting in response to the council's motion on direction that was provided. So just as a quick reminder, Reno's population grew by just a little bit over than 17% in the last decade, and the census data showed that our wards need to be rebalanced to be in compliance with Reno City Charter. Our total population deviation right now under our current boundaries is 20.9%, and we have to be at 5% or less. That is what we are aiming towards. And while right now we are at the formal adoption process, a lot of work has happened over the last few months, and we talked about that last week. We worked a lot with the community in the development of these options and these maps. And as we look at the item in front of you today, there are 4 maps to consider. Per charter, a 5/7 vote is required to change the ward boundaries. Similar to last week, any changes or direction other than the selection of one of the 4 options in front of you today will need to come back for introduction again. If direction to change a map is given, we would be looking at adopting in January unless a special meeting is called in December. So just a really quick recap from last week. We reviewed the redistricting principles that this body adopted and that were used as the guidelines throughout our entire process. We discussed the robust engagement process we used and shared that community feedback and how they helped shape the options. We know that there's no perfect map and there will be trade-offs and compromise in this conversation. And last week we reviewed maps A, B, and C. At the end of the council meeting last week, council provided direction to bring back a 4th option using final option B as the baseline and adjusting downtown to ensure that area is represented cohesively in one ward, including the university. So in order to maintain the integrity of option B as much as we could, we were focused on limiting areas of change to accomplish the direction that council provided us last week, while we were still balancing the guidelines as well as feedback we heard from the community early in the process. As the 4th option, final option D is a part of today's conversation. And Mr. Maloney with Flow Analytics is going to walk us through that option. Ben?
Excellent. Madam Mayor and Council, it's a pleasure to be with you all today. This is Ben Maloney, for the record. So final option D, we're taking those suggestions made last week and applying them, as Kelly said, to option B, and this is the result. We do have a total deviation of 3.4%, so well below that 5% total deviation that we're aiming to get under, and then a ward by ward breakdown with an over-under target that ranges in the low hundreds to 172 people under the ideal population for Ward 1 to 480 people under the ideal population for Ward 2. Ward 5 stands out somewhat with 1,307 people, or a 2.5% total deviation. Because the other wards remain fairly low, we still end up with that total deviation underneath 3.4%. So these options presented in, or this option is perfectly viable also along with the others. So this slide and the next few slides will detail some of the changes that took place. Actually, specifically this slide and the next slide highlight those changes that were made from B to C, with the remainder of the slides covering the option D changes that we went over last week. On the left side is the existing situation. On the right side is our scenario D. So our biggest changes take place with Ward 5. Now extends out to Lake Street and then up to Evans on the east side. And then slightly down on the southeast side of Ward 5, extends past 2nd Street towards the river. There is Ward 1, extends slightly northeast to an area just around Liberty, Arlington, Virginia, and the river also. Part of Ward 4 expands southward into Evans on the west side. And then a lot of changes also take place with Ward 3 as Ward 5 kind of moves towards the west to grab downtown. We see the OD Wells and then everything north of the river to 80 also falling back into Ward 3. Next slide, please. This is the other major change that took place between scenario B and scenario D, existing again on the left with the scenario D on the right. So this area bounded by McCarran on the east side, Mayan on the north and west side, and then 80 on the south undergoes a significant change, but we do keep part of Ward 1 north of I-80. This is an attempt to balance the total deviation. Without that small portion south of Shardlands, keep staying in Ward 1, we get a total deviation of 9%. So by keeping that 1,500 people in Ward 1, we could get that total deviation underneath 5% down to that 3.4% that we're aiming for. Slide. So this slide and the next few slides do cover the same slides that we went over last week. They are the same as presented in option B. So the big change here is the area around the golf course and Virginia Lake, north of Moana, changing from Ward 2 to Ward 1. A few more changes happening here. The area of Ward 1 that extends across Virginia now extends out to the highway and then south Moana, so it does affect part of Ward 3 and a little bit of Ward 2. And then we have a flip south of Moana and east of Virginia, going from Ward 2 to Ward 3. And then this is over at the mall, or the Meadowwood Mall, between Virginia and the Dry Creek, switching over from Ward 3, then over to Ward 2. And then finally, the last slide is around Skyline and then South McCarran, switching over from Ward 1 over to Ward 2. Okay.
Thanks, Ben, for walking us through that map. So we just wanted to walk through that map today since we just had this conversation last week. As a reminder, a motion to move forward with changing the ward boundaries would require a 5/7 vote, and the proposed motion is in front of you to select whatever map this body identifies and refer the bill for a second reading and adoption. With that, we are here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you so much. Councilman Reese, and then I'll go to Councilwoman Dewar.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Callie, I just wanted to thank you again to your team and the folks at Flow. You heard the ACLU here sing your praises, which is certainly very nice and welcoming. We don't always get a lot of praise, and when we do, it's nice to hear it. I also noticed there was a quote from one of the Hispanic outreach groups, and I'm sorry I forgot the name this morning, but they had a quote in the Nevada Independent talking again about how the city of Reno's process and their willingness to engage the public through online and in person and through the portal was really the model for the state. And I really attribute that to you and the team at Flow Analytics. And so I just thank you for that, because at the end of the day, we have to do a thing that is required of us by law every 10 years, and we do the best we can with it. I think, as I said in the last meeting, no map will be perfect. Everyone will have to give and take some element of the map, and ultimately what we're doing is trying to be fair and balanced. We never looked at voter registration numbers. We didn't look at putting people in certain areas. It was really following all those guiding principles about trying to keep communities of interest together, about understanding the balancing of the nature of the numbers. It also, I think, had to do with looking at various landmarks and roads and using those as a way to make certain that our map wasn't all gerrymandered. So again, my point is just to thank you and the team for providing us with the final solution in scenario D, and appreciate all the work that you did. Thank you so much.
All right, Councilwoman Dewar.
Yeah, thank you so much. Last time, Kelly, you came up with, you proposed 3 maps to us, and you said they all worked and they were balanced and so on and so forth. At that time, I registered a preference. I was a fan of map C, which you said was a legitimate map as well. And so since that time, since we took our vote, I've continued to hear from residents. We've gotten some apparently mail. We heard a voicemail just a minute ago. So I continued to look to see if I could help address those issues. And frankly, for most of them, I could not. I looked at, areas around Virginia Lake, areas that were, as the woman said, south of Brinkby, where a lot of the, Jewish people live. And given the way the map is laid out, I could not come up and address those. And I think this is not my time. I think they've run that too fast. But anyway, what I wanted to ask was, you started and you explained our timeframes. And so I just want to ask you, what if we do not adopt a map today and make a slight change, which I would like to recommend? What would be the process, and is that legal? I mean, what are the implications of that?
So if council were to provide direction today to bring forward a different option or changes to one of the options, we would bring back that option under that direction for introduction on December 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Then the body would be looking at adopting in January, unless a special meeting is called in December to adopt, to do the second reading and adoption. That would be the timeline that we would be looking at under that scenario.
Okay. So we have a meeting, though, on the 8th, but we could not adopt it on the 8th?
Correct. We need a certain amount of days in between first and second reading
Okay.
for ordinances, so that would not be feasible.
Okay. So, all right, so I still have time. So what you're saying, it's legal, but it would push it back because of this time between the 2 readings if we adopted it December 1st instead of today.
That is correct.
Okay.
The implication from the registrar's office is they originally asked for our new maps by November 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Our conversation with them was that was really not going to be feasible given the timeline of the census and our need to do community outreach.
Mm-hmm.
So we had talked about December 1st as being
Okay.
that. So the implication of that would just be notifying the registrar's office.
Okay, so it's possible, and there's no legal requirements that would prohibit it. So given that I have a tiny bit more time, I will just say, to the people that wrote in and all, I've done a lot of analysis, and I don't see a way to, move that line north of Moana and keep all the numbers in the order within the 5%. So I commend you for the analysis. But I would like to address one of the comments, and that is about the convention center parcel. And I've provided my colleagues, you and the clerk, with a proposed map that would actually, the gentleman showed that one of the convention center parcel, which has some residents, the convention center and some businesses and the Atlantis, is currently in Ward 2. I would request, based on the requests that we've received specifically, to move that back to Ward 2. I did an analysis, quick and dirty, and this is something your consultants would have to do, which, assuming that the residents would come with, these are residents that I'm already familiar with and have been providing services to, the Village of the Pines and Phoenix, Reno. There could be a small trade-off, and you just showed on a previous map that you were expanding Ward 1 into the Charlins and Mayan area. And I looked there, and there was about 260 residents, and I think if they moved, we would still be well within the 5%. This is just my analysis, but it would have to be up to your GIS folks. And Madam Mayor, I can come back on a second comment, but I'd like to just explain why I would like to make this recommendation.
All right. I think it was Councilman Backus.
I mean, my general philosophy has been to have as little input as possible from my perspective as a sitting council member, and I think that's consistent with the process. And I would prefer not to see this move into January. I think that would slip on our ability as a group to get stuff done. I mean, the mayor, obviously, or the city manager, and I think there's one other way, can call a special meeting, to wind it up, but I don't know. But but I want to be sensitive to Ms. Stewart from Ward 2, because that's the ward that was the most impacted, I think. The numbers show, and the one that was probably in 2010 when, the depths of the recession were hitting, maybe the analysis there, how the wards were left at, did not do as good a job as it could have. And I was somewhat tangentially watching all of that. And I think the forecasting of how Reno was going to grow, they used the best information they had, but they probably left a little bit more on the table in terms to have Ward 2 really be that boom ward, which I think has been reflective in the constituent workload to that member. So I want to be sensitive to that. Are we agendized to also adopt that map C that Ms. Dewar stated a preference for today?
Yes, the council could identify any of the 4 maps, A, B, C, or D.
D is the modified.
D is the modified.
Okay. But if we made the D with the changes she talked about, that would push us into January. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Or we could have a special meeting, you said?
Yeah.
Just to clarify.
For the record, Madam Mayor, just to clarify, we can't have a special meeting for the adoption of the ordinance. It has to be done at a regular meeting. So just clarifying, it'd have to go in January.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'd like to ask the attorneys, I've never seen that you can't adopt ordinances during a special meeting. Where is that reside in the charter?
That's in the charter. It's in section 2.100, and it's subsection 2. At the next regular meeting or adjourned regular meeting of the City Council held at least 10 days after date of publication, the proposed ordinance must be returned to the City Council for consideration and possible adoption. So
Okay, I appreciate that. I don't think it's come up in the years I've been on. So, okay, I just, for letting the body know where we're at, I think for me, I don't really want to make a motion, but having seen the D modified, which, impacts Ward 1 quite a bit, I would, if I was to have my druthers, I would say C is the one that looks best to me. But, of course, if D is the one that the motion goes with, the mayor, and we'd have to move that to January. Okay. When's our first January meeting?
What is it?
I think it's
Oh,
the
it's
second.
late. Yeah. Okay.
Late, what's the date?
Well, late means it's
January 12th.
Okay.
January 12th.
Okay. I don't see anyone's hand up, but I think you, Councilwoman Dewar.
Sure, I'll put my hand up. So the reason that I'm asking for this consideration, and I probably didn't articulate it very well at the last meeting, so I just wanted to say why I'm suggesting keep retaining this parcel in Ward 2. It's in Ward 2 now. We've had a number of requests from businesses and residents to maintain it. I built a rapport with those residents, as well as the businesses. I've been working on updating the convention center plan zoning. You guys may remember when we started the zoning, they said we had to come back in 5 areas and address the zoning, and this was one of them. And so I began working with our community development staff on that. Several of the buildings are tied together. So we have the convention center tied to the Atlantis with the skywalk, and then we have the Atlantis tied across Virginia Street back to Ward 2 with another skywalk that is the property is currently used for parking. I do expect some redevelopment in that area, and it just makes sense to continue working with the residents and businesses. So I could go either way depending on what my colleagues were interested in. I could just take the infrastructure. I'm very happy to keep my residents that are in those apartments to do so and make sure we're under the 5%. I've identified additional move that would extend the move you've already proposed out in Ward 5 and 1. I've given everybody a map. Would you mind putting that map up, Kelly? I think you have a copy of it.
Can you give me,
just so people know what we're talking about.
Madam Clerk, could you put up the overhead?
Yeah. So what I'm recommending is the area in purple, green, that's a triangle, is the convention center parcel. And I would recommend moving that back to Ward 1. The area I've drawn with the extra little black line, that's Kitski, and the one is I-80 on the right. In between those two lines are some residents, about 1,000 residents. And I'm very happy to keep them with me. Over on the left, where I've circled, is a continuation of what our staff just presented about moving, I think, 1,300 or so residents into Ward 1. This would be a recommendation to add another 262 residents. Right now, those residents, I looked at it, that's the end of the city. There's no more roads. It touches Ward 1, the blue. And it would sort of just finish out that little piece there. So I don't know how my colleagues feel, but I could go either with the residents and there'd be no change to your map D in terms of numbers, or we could, if to take the whole parcel, it could add these residents, move these residents. So that's my request. I'd really appreciate it. I like to hear my colleagues. That's why I supported where you were going, prior to this. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, Councilwoman Jordan.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Callie, and everybody and the consultants for working on this. I know we had very robust discussions at our last meeting, and I appreciate everybody going back and looking at the continuity and connectivity with the university and the downtown area, and being able within the parameters, the narrow parameters of which we can modify these, to relook at that and coming back with that modification, which I'm fully in support of. I'm hesitant to push this out further. I think my motion was pretty clear on the areas that I believed needed to have a fresh look, and I stand with that and my support of option D as presented here today.
Councilwoman Breckus, and then I'll go to Councilman Reese.
Yeah, I just want to say, D, I supported the relook at D, but seeing it now from a Ward 1 perspective, I would really default on C, to be honest with you. And that's the one that I would like to see come forward at this point.
Councilman Reese.
Thank you. And my question is for our folks at Flow Analytics. Two questions. One is, does the census, the examination of census information every 10 years, does it take into account commercial buildings? And second, does the census track folks of Jewish heritage?
Yeah, I can handle that one. It does not take into account commercial buildings and does not track any sort of religious affiliation. So we have no information on either.
Okay, I think this is the reason why I'm not sure I understand ultimately the rationale for moving a commercial piece. First, I did speak to a number of folks who are members of the Jewish community following our last meeting. I think I also received a fairly nasty email from one particular resident who called me an anti-Semite because I did not take into account the feelings that individual had. And so in talking with folks in the Jewish community, they were, at least the people that I spoke to, were a little bit surprised by the request that some folks had made because, certainly the ordinance doesn't prevent you from, when we draw the lines, for example, doesn't prevent you from walking to a synagogue, right? I don't think any of us believe that. And so I never understood exactly what was being asked for in that regard. So, given those factors and my original hesitation to deviate from original map B, I make an assumption that the motion will be made and I'll have to choose where I fall. For me, D satisfies the requirements that I have for our redrawing of these maps every 10 years.
All right, and the gentleman from Flow, what's his name? Benjamin. Hi, Benjamin. Thank you so much for being here and all your work. I think it's fascinating. How did you get into this, by the way? I mean, seriously, I was thinking, wow, how does that happen? I'm curious.
Yeah, it was mostly accidental.
I would think, because I just can't imagine, but that's cool. Benjamin, can you tell me, because I think Councilman Reese brings up actually some really good points. It was really disheartening. We all, many of us received an email, accusing us of things that were pretty severe. It was pretty shocking. I actually grew up in a Jewish home. My stepfather was Jewish. So, and I have great relationships in the Jewish community and have signed on to a lot of initiatives for the Conference of Mayors. And I know my Councilman Reese has also been a huge advocate and shown up at many of those events, and so is Councilman Delgado. And so I really want to put that on the record because it was, obviously very concerning. But my question is for you, why do they not put in commercial buildings or the other, what was it, commercial buildings and religious affiliation? Sorry, I have COVID brain. I do. I can't, it's tough. Okay, so can you tell me why that is?
I'm unsure of the specifics behind that. I'm sure there's probably some arcane rule or decision that was made way back when, and it's just been carrying forward, but I can dig into that and get answers for you. But I don't have anything specific on hand right now.
Okay, and I really appreciate that. And I also I have to say, to everyone, obviously, I honestly want this process to be smooth and everyone to get along. And now, they're obviously, after last meeting, there was definitely some dissension. And, I have not been involved in this process at all. I just, I want all of us to look at Reno as we're all rooting for Reno, regardless. I know there's been some talk. Councilwoman Dewar has done great work on Virginia Lake. And here's what I would say. Even though that might not be in your ward anymore, we should all be here together rooting for Reno and also lifting each other up and helping in those wards. Because I've seen it become extremely territorial, and I think it honestly has really damaged a lot of the city. If you don't have a representative downtown or you have other council members that aren't at the table, quite honestly, ward-only voting has really been damaging. I'm lucky if I get one council member whenever I go to ribbon cuttings or groundbreakings or things like that. And it's honestly, and I used to get all the council. And so now I see people saying, nope, that's not my ward, so I really don't care about that. And I think, for me, this has been hard, and I've seen a little bit of this in this process. And it's pretty unfortunate. So I do want to call that out. And I also want to say, my goal is that everyone gets along and represents everyone in the city equally, because they walk on those same bike paths, they drive on the same streets, and they don't know those boundaries within those wards. So all of us together need to be rooting for Reno and be on the same page with our entire community, whether it's your ward or not. So anyway, thank you. All right, Councilwoman Jordan.
Thank you very much. I too, when we looked at these maps, I mean, we all work super hard in our wards, and we feel very passionate about the areas and the neighborhoods in which we represent. And your comments, I was at Norm DeAnda's services yesterday, day before yesterday, and someone came up to me who I've been working with for quite some time on some issues related to East 4th Street, which you all know is an area that will no longer be in Ward 5, but something that I've worked on for quite some time as it related to activities on East 4th and the Nevada Cares Campus, which is also a passion project and has been, of mine for quite some time, and I'm going to lose those. I assured the individual and everybody on CHAB and everything else that I'm going nowhere. I will still be the champion of and the advocate for those areas, and will work with the new ward member and pass on information that I have and work hand in hand to continue to advocate for those areas. So to your point, Madam Mayor, I too am sad that I will be losing some areas that I've worked really hard on for a number of years, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm still here, still going to do the work, and still will work with whomever the council representative is going forward.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Councilwoman Dewar, and then we're going to Councilman Delgado.
Sure. Just a response to a few comments I heard. I didn't want the room to believe that a Jewish person sent any nasty letter to you. They were not. So I want to get that on the record. Number two, I acknowledge, just as Councilwoman Jardin does, that the area, of course, I've been very passionate about Virginia Lake, and I expect, just like she, to continue working on that. And I have not made a comment about that here today, about that should belong to me. I mean, it was split with 2 wards. It was split with Ward 1 and Ward 2 prior to this, and it'll all be on Ward 1 by now. But like you, I'm not planning to abandon anything. What I'm recommending is that is not anything about, I'm going to make this very clear, Jewish people. It's not about passion projects. It is about a continuity. We have projects that have a skywalk with a restaurant on it, attaching 2 pieces of land across Virginia. If the vote doesn't go that way, I'm not going to stop working on those issues. But I'm asking for your support and on that, just like I thought that Councilwoman Jardin made a good, recommendation. She asked for a change, and it made sense to me. I had to vote no because I also thought my change should, at least be considered. So that's where I'm at. I hope that, I don't want to have a split vote on this, but I would ask again, I'm asking very clearly that you allow us, them to do the work just as they did for Councilwoman Jardin on this parcel, and keep us within the 5%. So I'll stop now. And I mean, I've made my pitch.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're on third, so I just
I
wanna
apologize.
Send it to Councilman Delgado.
Thank you,
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor. And just again, want to acknowledge the team. I'll acknowledge our third party. I thought that was smart for us to go third party to keep things as external and as transparent as possible. So great job and moving forward with that. I descended from the vote in the past from the previous council, but really support option D now. I thought you guys, again, walking that fine line, hearing the comments from the board, and appreciate the council members expressing their concerns. You guys did the best you can moving forward, and I think that's the product that we have here in front of us. Hearing people's arguments, seeing emails and so forth, I think as all other council members know, is I currently work with communities that are not in my ward that reach out to me. And so happy to continue doing that. Again, to the mayor's point, these aren't necessarily fences or concrete slabs that are going to keep us apart from being able to do that. And I look forward to continuing to work with and invite other council members to work with me if lines of change are now in my ward, and vice versa. If you now take on portions of my ward, look forward to working with you on some of those issues. And I think that's how we resolve some of just the what the mayor's saying is that there's some isolations, and I think we can break that apart. So thank you, good job. Look forward to supporting option D. And Madam Mayor, look forward to making that motion.
All right, go ahead. That's your motion?
That's my motion.
All right. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Wait, what was the motion? I just was not hearing because.
You what?
Option D.
D?
D as in David.
Okay.
D as in Delgado.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'll do a 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay, well, I wish you would consider my request. I understand you're not. I believe in compromise and working with the team, so I will support the motion. It's not what I want. I wanted option C. I think that was very good. I just want to put it on the record that when we have redistricting, whether that's in 2024 as currently laid out in our charter and legislation, or that's 10 years from now in 2030, none of us will be in office. I hope that some of these issues can get addressed then and maybe start there, because Ward 2's had so much change. So that, I'd just like to say I'd also like to continue working on Virginia Lake and other things. I'm working on Swan Lake, frankly, with Councilwoman Weber. So there you go. Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
I'm going to support Ms. Dewar's position. I liked option C too. And I think it's fair to look at it now because, we didn't have the map at D until we got the packet. And I went along with revising D to go to D, but it, I think, still stands on equity with C, which was an original one that came out of the process. So I feel like I'm being consistent with how I wanted to go forward and cognizant that this is a unique vote because the majority is required. So I'm going to oppose also.
No, I didn't say I was opposing. I said I was supporting.
Oh.
Because I believe in compromise, and although I haven't been, I don't think, fully heard here, I'm going to continue working, and maybe it can get addressed in a future
Okay,
time.
then I misunderstood, and I will support also.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. That was discussion. Councilwoman Weber?
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. I have to say that I just appreciate all the work that Callie and the rest of the team has done on this. But I also want to say I do support this D, and I look forward to working with everyone. Although mine was changed very little, but I look forward to working with all. And I think that's what we all do. So I just wanted to say something positive about working together on this.
Yeah, and Madam Mayor, can I just say the one objection I do have to this is just it puts just a little tiny sliver over the freeway for the Ward 1 rep, and that's, basically the Ward 1 rep is going up there for an apartment complex, I think, or a small subdivision. That's the objection that I have, but I can live with it certainly too.
I think, at the end of the day, you guys, this is about Reno as a whole. And we all represent Reno because I think every single one of you were actually, well, maybe not Councilwoman Weber, but I think all of you were elected citywide.
I was.
So when people elected you, they elected you citywide. So at this point, no boundaries, no lines. We are here, like I said, rooting for Reno, all of us together, working on the city together. And I appreciate you, Councilwoman Dewar, being supportive in that capacity.
Yeah, of course.
That shows that everyone is in it to do this together, and that's important.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. So I appreciate that. Let's see. So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Are those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Callie. I know everyone just loves working with you, and even though some people are never happy, you can make them happy. Everyone loves you.
And
So,
Madam Mayor,
thank you, Cassie.
a final comment from me. I think that you made some really good points about being citywide. I was elected citywide. What's happened, and I think you've identified it correctly, is that the voters now can only vote within their wards. And so what's happened is no matter what we do, just like in the legislature, they can only vote for the people in their district. They tend to identify with us even ever more because we're their representative. And as such, I just want to be clear with my colleagues. I have done my advocacy job for Double Diamond, Lake Ridge, the Moana Lakeside community, the former parts of Ward 2, and that is what they expect out of me, and that's what I'm always, I'm signed up to do at this point, not my choice, right? So, but I am here for Reno.
Madam
To your
Mayor, if I
point.
may, real quick,
Yeah,
I would say,
please, Councilman Delgado.
good job, Naomi, with doing the option D. It solidifies a lot of the, I think by far the most comments we got was not to split up Double Diamond. And if you would have went option C, that's what would have
No,
happened.
option C did not split up Double Diamond.
It would have gave me a big chunk of, it would have split that up, right?
No, they're not the Double Diamond residents.
The southern.
It was
South
the
Reno?
businesses that would have gone into, so it was, it was fine. So that's why I was fine with C, because they kept the residents, and that's what they cared about. So.
Thank you. I'll look forward
Thank
to
you.
working with you and
Good.
Ferrari, the Atlantis and the businesses.
Very good. Thank you.
All right.
All right, Madam Mayor, we are moving on to item H1, which is City Council comments for boards and commissions.
All right. Councilwoman Brecka. Councilwoman Dewar.
Yeah, I'll just say that the Urban Forestry Commission has been working like heck, doing extra special meetings about every week, every other week, to get a tree ordinance. It's actually parts of two ordinances, Chapter 8 and Chapter 18, here and done. And I expect that come January, that's going to be out in the public and being getting commentary, and they just have worked so hard. They've all shown up, and I also have to give a shout out to, she is not here anymore, Jamie Schroeder again, because she's been at every meeting with us, and she's made sure that the process flows smoothly. And I got to give a shout out to Kelly, because she has been the scrivener for this process. She is now the only, what do you call it, Doug? Some kind of planner. Kelly's a different kind of planner, long range, I think. So she's our only long range planner, and she has been working really hard as well on this. So we're hoping to bring it in for a landing for you in the new year sometime. And I'm just really excited to get that across the finish line. So thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Councilwoman Weber.
I'd just like to share that we have a neighborhood advisory board meeting tomorrow for Ward 4, and it's at our local library, North Valley's library. And so just want to invite everyone. It starts at 6 o'clock.
All right, great. Councilman Reese?
Madam Mayor, thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to pause to acknowledge the passing of Norm Deonda. It was a very moving service this week, and certainly we all know many of the buildings and that have been built, but more importantly, you know, a company of that size and stature, and a person as large as Norm was, not only built buildings, but built lives, you know, of people who were employed and made their living through building this community. So just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Jordan, do you want to add to that?
I'll add to that, and then I have another comment. Yes, the services were incredible, and my goodness, there was hundreds and hundreds of people there. It was just a beautiful ceremony to see the workers with politicians, with industry leaders, with children, with. It really spoke to what an impact Norm had on the community. And you can't look at a building or a road and not see the orange, white, and black of Q&D. They just always have done exemplary work, and been around. My goodness, I didn't realize since 1960 something, and it was just incredible. So to the Deanda family, our deepest condolences, and support the ACE Charter High School, which was a passion project of.
I love that he did
yes,
that.
yes,
I love
just incredible. So it was a great ceremony, and a remembrance of a great man. Separately, as my mask represents, we cannot have this meeting conclude without saying "Go Lancers," who are going to be in the state championship game against Bishop Gorman, I believe, and. To the cheerleaders, the community came together in the matter of, I think, a day, a 48-hour period to help them get the $8,000+ they needed to get there. So we'll be cheering you on from Northern Nevada. Go Lancers.
All right. Anyone else? No? Okay. Can I get a motion? All right. I have a motion.
Madam Mayor,
Go
just
ahead.
for final closing public comment, we did receive 2 letters, general in nature, or received after 4 p.m. yesterday.
Okay.
And additionally, we had 1 voicemail, but due to vulgarity, we're unable to play it. The redacted transcript of that has been included in the record. And with that, we're now ready to look for a motion on K.
I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Thanks, everyone.